privacy concerns are going to lead to what I suspect will be the year of the false positive. And a lot of this is coming out of Europe, where VAMP is now kind of taking charge. Xavi talked to us about this the other day. So think about this maelstrom that's taking place, Nikhita. You have no blank Sherlock. Fraud is on the rise. Everyone knows that. Everyone's concerned with it. And we have all of these AI companies coming out and saying, hey, we're going to stop all your fraud. We've got the latest and greatest things to shut it all down. Get on with us. Cool. At the same time, you have, at least in the United States and likely in Europe, I'd love to hear from you on that, you have a growing concern around privacy consciousness from your average mom and pop. People who never knew about VPNs or secure browsers and stuff like that are now getting hyped to it through commercials, through podcasts, and they're sitting at the dinner table saying, hey, wait a minute, why is all my privacy being compromised here? Why is all my information being stolen? I'm done with that. I want to switch to a VPN or something along those lines. And then you have VAMP. And VAMP is saying, I don't care if it's a fraud chargeback, a item not received, SNAD, whatever. It all counts the same against you, merchant. And we're going to put you into timeout, and timeout's going to be very costly if any of those chargeback metrics start to spike up. All of that is coming together to create the year of the false positive, and that's what worries me, because good buyers are suddenly going to turn incognito. Those AI platforms are going to start snatching them all up with the trawler that's catching the good along with the bad. And then you have VAMP telling merchants that you need to be super conservative around what you're doing this year. So that's what's top of mind for me. I'd love to hear what you think about that, especially as regards this growing concern over privacy from the lunch pail crew, the people who really never thought about their fingerprint on the internet too much.
I think from our perspective over here, I think the VAMP stuff that's huge, right? In terms of the actual fraud checks, we have 3D Secure that's in place. It's mandatory. Everything goes through that. I think the privacy bit is going to have some impact, but I think, we already saw a big kind of, this thing that came into place with 3D Secure, but the VAMP piece, the kind of non-fraud counting towards the chargeback numbers, that's the thing that's front of mind already pre-VAMP. I think all of those kind of more abuse rather than fraud issues were becoming more and more front of mind. The problem with that I found speaking to retailers is that sometimes it can be hard to monetize exactly what that issue is. And then the other piece that comes in is who is the one that is experiencing that? Is it customer service? Is it like delivery center or, like the warehouse? Is it logistics? Or is it the fraud team? Is it the payments team? Like, where does this fall under? Now with VAMP, this all falls under the payments piece, which often falls under finance. It'll fall under the fraud part of the business, as well as all the other parts that it touched before. But this is the piece that I think is front of mind for retailers in Europe today.
You talked a lot about multiple pieces here, and it sounds, call me simple, it sounds like a big old puzzle. Have you been shocked at how difficult it is for some of the best and brightest corporations to link the pieces of that puzzle? Because at least from my end, I've seen companies with massive distribution networks spread out across this vast country, and I've looked at them as a consumer as the best and brightest, a tentpole in this economy. And when I start talking to them, sometimes it seems like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is up to. Are you seeing that? And do you think that is one of the themes of 2025? How do I connect my warehouse to my boardroom and vice versa? How do I make sure that we all know what's going on? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I don't think that is a new issue. I think especially with some of the more kind of, the companies that have been around a long time, the big, huge ones that maybe started with bricks and mortar, then moved to e-commerce, I don't think that is uncommon. I think maybe with some of the early e-com only companies, that is also perhaps not uncommon. I think with the newer tech-forward businesses, newer tech-forward companies, I think they can be pretty aligned. But what you're saying, it's not a new problem. Left hand and right hand not knowing what they're doing. Like you've got different pieces. And I think with e-commerce in general, especially for some of the more traditional companies, this has been a constant work in progress. Actually, I think in Europe, I think, and I might be biased, but I think we are further ahead than the US. I think we've had to become further ahead because from a tech standpoint with 3D Secure, we then had to accelerate. I mean, if you're looking at in-store chip and pin, I mean, we're the OG of that. We're the original ones that adopted Apple Pay. When you think about payment methods, we are, when you think about privacy law, everything, we are the trailblazers in all of this. And whether that creates initial friction that then turns into non-friction or remains as friction, I think we're ahead of you guys when it comes to this stuff, in my opinion, and in my experience and what I see.
Well, I love it. And I think that's a great setup. I think you just threw yourself a softball there. What would you recommend for American merchants who are feeling that disconnect throughout their ecosystem? And specifically, where should they be looking? Because over here, it seems the R word is on everyone's mind. That's returns. They want to really focus on that returns piece. Do you feel like that might be the red herring, or is that just the obvious pink elephant in the room? What would you tell me if I'm coming to you and saying, Nikhita, I am lost here. How can I really integrate?
So what I am finding more and more is returns in itself is becoming a department in an organization. So there is someone that owns that piece in with a retailer, someone who owns returns, and that person then pulls in the information from the left hand, the right hand, both feet, every single part of the body, pulls it together, and it's working with the right partners and that's across logistics, across payments, across fraud, across all the different pieces, pulling it together and being able to connect all those dots and then be able to identify what is the problem. What is the problem, both in terms of like size and in terms of monetary? How much is this costing us? And then being able to find, what would be the ideal scenario and how to fix this? How can we fix it? And who can help us do that?
Who can help us do that? I love that. I would like this to become inspirational for a second here. And Super Bowl is top of mind for all of us over here right now. Eagles obviously won. Robert's a huge Eagles fan. And there's a story around a former player for the Eagles, and that's Jason Kelce. He was a center, and he was never a center before in his life.
Nothing to do with Travis Kelce.
They're distant relatives. Yeah, that's his brother, right? His the guy who does the Campbell Soup commercials. If you get them over there, I don't know, but he was never a center in his life. And then all of a sudden, the coach saw him and said, "You'd be a great center." He took this role and became one of the best ever. Right. So you're talking about this growing need for some sort of connector, some sort of almost a matchmaker to get in this position. I guess a scrum half or a fly half in rugby terms. Who do you think could slot into that from the traditional corporate structure, who may have never thought of themselves in that position? What kind of skills do you think would be needed there, and what kind of professional profile really would thrive in that kind of environment? If you don't mind inspiring the folks out there real quick.
I think it's someone who knows the business and someone who knows different parts of the business, someone who understands the unique challenges that come with returns, e-commerce returns, understands e-commerce, how that works. I mean, for some retailers, they embrace returns. They have a 60% returns rate that they encourage. For others, they don't want, depending on the sector, they don't want more than 5%. And then also, in that, what is the actual abuse? Like, what is the problem here? How much of this is someone sending back a brick? How much of it is someone sending back an item of clothing they've already worn? How do you track that? How does it work? And so it's someone who understands the business, understands e-commerce, and someone who also is good at making different departments work well together and speak the same language.
And what's the slice of pie for them, right? Because it sounds like this is a huge dollars and cents issue. Yeah. So how big are you seeing that among the biggest ones?
I mean, we see retailers who this is a multi-million pound, because I'm in the UK, issue for enterprise retailers. not having a clear refund returns policy strategy, something that's put in place, this is a big problem.
Well, it sounds like we've just inspired a bunch of people. Fantastic job, Nikhita, so far. We talked about returns. We talked about integrating warehouse to boardroom and all that other fun stuff. When I talked to Xavi the other day, I brought up, we're talking about promoting people here. This is kind of like a very inspirational talk today, right? But we talked about the fact that fraud managers, traditional fraud managers in this new VAMP ecosystem are kind of becoming revenue optimizers. There's a little bit of a title change there. How do you see, kind of, you could zoom out as much as you want. You could go kind of cross department or whatever. How do you see the traditional e-commerce structure, the hierarchical structure changing? I think you've alluded to it a little bit here with this returns maven coming in to fix things there. How do you see things evolving, not just now, but let's say even a few years into the future? What kind of skills and perspectives need to be addressed that could, if not addressed, leave big time retailers in the dark?
I think you are absolutely correct when you say it's about revenue optimization. It's about increasing conversions, reducing those false positives, making sure that the genuine buyers, trying to make sure every genuine buyer is able to purchase an item, and everyone who does not have genuine intentions is blocked. And ultimately, what that means is that you have this reduction in fraud, an increase in conversions, and an uplift in revenue, an increase in customer lifetime value. So when we're talking about what is this role going to look like in the future, I think it's going to continue to evolve to be that, about revenue optimization. This part impacts every single section of a business, whether it's finance, whether it's logistics, whether it is customer service, marketing, you name it. Every part is involved. I mean, like, how many people have had a declined transaction for no reason and then gone onto Twitter and sent a message, or X, sent a message to the CEO of that company, right? Or you find someone, like, everyone is impacted by this. You, I don't know if I'm allowed to say, you piss people off, then it impacts the entire business. And with such public forums, with social media, etc., you just cannot do that willy-nilly. Is that a saying that you use in the US, willy-nilly?
I love it. Yes, yes. And whoever's editing this down the line, you need to put the funniest sound effect when Nikhita said piss, for like, yeah, it's a
You say
fantastic.
that as well, though, right? If you're going to piss someone off.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And if when you piss someone off, you go and give them a proper bollocking, like, of course.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or as my grandma used to say, "You're gonna go and bust their balls." But anyway,
Yeah, 100%.
this revenue optimizer, that this hypothetical revenue optimizer we're talking about, right? You brought up false positives. From your experience now and things that you've seen and kind of projecting into the future, or what is the responsibility that someone who is revenue driven has as regards false positives? It's my estimation that a lot of people just take the decline traffic as decline traffic and don't do anything with it. I see that there's, at least in my head, there's a lot of benefit with, let's say, marketing and what marketing does with their outreach and things like that when it comes to that decline traffic bucket, that false positive bucket potentially. So what would a savvy revenue optimizer do with false positives? What should they be asking of their provider? What does that feedback loop look like to you in a very efficient world?
So I think first and foremost, any good provider will be able to share data on why those declines happened, right? And then it's understanding, why did those declines happen, and were they false positives or not? And also just being able to zoom out and understand, what are the trends that are happening? Is it in a particular region? And if you're working with a good provider, they'll be able to say, look, you have a spike in declines here because there is this specific fraud ring that is targeting retailers such as yourselves, specifically around, for example, let's say for argument's sake, the Barcelona area. And so we've seen that, these addresses, everything is around there. And we know that these are known fraudsters. So those aren't false positives. Those are genuine declines. And if your provider is not able to share data like that, then for me, that's like, okay, there's something going on here. And we are declining potentially good traffic. And then I think the other part as well is, your business, right? Your business, your customers, you have this information. And if you feel that something is off, there is a chance that it is off. Like, I think even for us guys, we have the facts, we have the data, and sometimes it is, our term for it is drift signals, right? And that's basically, humans have drift signals too, when the stuff we're seeing doesn't add up. And if it doesn't, go and investigate, find out what's going on and why is this happening. I think what I at least see, the bigger problem is people are like, oh, I've got a great provider because I don't have any chargebacks at all. I don't have any fraud. They're blocking everything that's bad. Okay, they're blocking 30% of all your transactions. That is not right. That is not okay. Consistently for the last 3 years, 30% of your transactions are being blocked, then red flag.
Big time. Well, and let's talk about more red flags. I am meeting with somebody today who is in charge of IT at a very up and coming hot retailer, clothing store. And they have said that they have no reseller issues. They have no reshipper issues.
Okay.
Does your red flag go up when you hear someone speak so authoritatively or so conclusively that there is no fraud? There's nothing. There's everything is hunky dory. Like, and also, but beyond the red flag going up, is there an opportunity that's being missed? And what is that opportunity?
So I think just a little bit of background about me. I'm a bit of a fraud newbie. So my background has been in payments. And so fraud is like, something that I've been involved in the last couple of years. Now, I have from the past also had those conversations. Oh, there's no issues here. There's no issues here. And I've taken it at face value. And in recent years, I've learned actually it's about asking the questions and understanding, because people often don't know that there is a problem. It's by asking those right questions, doing that right discovery. And some different companies have different reseller, reshipper policies. Now, that means that there are resellers and reshippers, but they embrace them. These resellers and reshippers are not doing anything fraudulent. And then the other ones, you have the other, like the luxury retailers who don't want anyone reselling and reshipping their stuff. And so I think it is asking those right questions and understanding their policies. I think sometimes fraud can be a little bit black and white. It's that abuse, it's that pre and post purchase stuff that is like a bit more gray. And that's when you ask the questions, and the answers and whether it's a problem or not often depends on the business policy. I mean, yes, someone returning a brick instead of a pair of sneakers, that's an issue. But with the resellers, the reshippers, sometimes, it's understanding what's going on there and what the business policies are. And it's an education thing. Like for me, your sessions are an education session for me. So it's like, we're all learning, including our customers, including our partners, including us.
If we're learning, and by the way, thank you for that. That was very sweet of you to say. If we're all learning and there is this big gray area, wouldn't you say that this hypothetical revenue optimizer can take the insights that are given to them by a strong provider, by a strong partner, and then do some internal work? Like, let's say hypothetically, you're seeing a lot of friendly fraud chargebacks come through, and the provider can say, well, those friendly fraud chargebacks are coming through from people who, in one way or another, are having difficulty around your return policy. So maybe the revenue optimizer says something like, well, maybe we have to readdress that return policy. Do you see pivotable moments like that that come through from insights gleaned through a provider's insights? And what does that look like for you? What kind of wins can be had in that way?
So I think the insights and changing those business policies, that's a big part. That's a big part of what we do when we speak to retailers, when we speak to customers. Being able to advise on those policies is when it comes to that kind of, the more grayer area, that is what we can really help with. But the other piece is that the right partner, the right provider has additional data. We see things that a merchant cannot see. We see more than their payment provider will see. We see way more information and we have those insights. And yes, our job is to help our customers, right? And provide those insights and help and advise them on their policies. And we're able to do that because we're able to leverage all this information, all this data, all these different points from all over the world and help businesses with their policies. I mean, we can also, depending on how we work with them, we can be the ones who put those policies in place. There's different levels of it, and everything is dependent on a customer's requirements and appetite for whether they want to have full control over it, whether they want us to have full control over it and just get the information from us. I think it's a tailored solution.
I love it. You've done fantastic, Nikhita. This has been great. I could keep going. We're a little over, but I want to end on one bit. Top of mind for Nikhita going into 2025, or we're already in it. What do you think is an unknown unknown for the broader industry and where people should be a little bit, let's put a little FUD out there in the world, right? What do you think is the thing that people are just not picking up on right now, or the flaw in their system, that thing at their six that they need to be worried about? What would you recommend people kind of tighten up on or put new eyes on right now? Anything that comes to your mind is
I think we touched on it already. It's abuse. It's that, consumer abuse. It's being able to have the right tracking, the right policies, the right partner in place to help firstly identify what the abuse problem is, and then secondly stop it from happening.